There's been a bit of a trend lately, with fairly standard gameplay loops that then have players move to the rhythm of music, with timing proving crucial on every step and attack. Crypt of the Necrodancer may be the most famous example, but we also have games like BPM Bullets Per Minute last year. Now it's time for an ambitious top-down action game with a meaty soundtrack and a lengthy campaign. Soundfall's story serves the basic premise for such a game to function, and it grabs some of the most common tropes in any media. Our main character is suddenly transported from their mundane daily job into the world of Symphonia, a magical place of music and sounds that's been run over by demons, and for some convenient lore reasons, only we can stop this by playing our weapons, that are in reality musical instruments. In short, it's an action rhythm game, and the story becomes largely irrelevant pretty early on. The story is told via on-screen text bubbles and anime-style hand-drawn musical cutscenes, with the latter in particular working pretty damn well. This isn't really a fatal flaw for the game, however, as the gameplay loop underneath is sound, pun intended. At its core, it's a fairly standard but polished and fast-paced top-down twin-stick shooter. Players move through colorful dungeons as they maul dozens to hundreds of enemies with a selection of short-range and distant weapons alike, all resembling musical instruments. Massive firepower has to be alternated with well-timed dodges and other evasive maneuvers, with traps, secret paths, and loot rendering the maps interesting even in the moments where they may seem a little slower. It is a single-player game by default, but it can also be played by up to 4 players via local and online co-op alike. As I said, however, the key element is that everything moves to the beat of the soundtrack. Much like in a rhythm game, every level has a single song with a start and a finish, and players attempt to beat the final enemies before the song loops for higher scores. Unlike in the aforementioned Bullets Per Minute, moving outside of the beats is possible, and so is attacking, with only a few contextual traversal options that are tied to the beat. Effectiveness of hits and dodges greatly increases if timed right though, with the game's score and rating systems also generously rewarding playing the game at the optimal pace. While it's a simple gameplay loop on paper, there is a surprisingly deep RPG-esque loot system underneath it all that keeps it varied and exciting. Level-based items, 3 kinds of elemental damage, but also a good selection of differently functioning armaments, from the musical equivalent of assault rifles to shotguns and so on. The player can always keep 2 different weapons in their inventory, so combining their powers is crucial to get through the stages. Failing one results in having to start it again, but since levels can mostly be completed in the length of a song, ranging from 2 to 5 minutes, we're not exactly talking about a lot of progress lost. Visually, the game has a colorful and pleasant vibe, with cartoony atmospheres surrounding the player. Trees, buildings, and other decorations move and dance to the rhythm, which also helps keeping the correct beat when attacking and moving around. All stages are generated by an algorithm, though the various levels of the massive campaign of the game do not change between one playthrough and another. This perhaps is one of Soundfall's biggest weaknesses. The levels feel rather similar between one another, and the BPM differences don't exactly alter the gameplay loop all that much. The variety of playable characters and weapons, though, at least helps break the monotony. Indeed, at its core, Soundfall is a pretty standard twin-stick shooter. The rhythm-based aspects certainly give it a personality, and the massive soundtrack of over 100 songs works really well. Yet the action tends to get pretty chaotic with several enemies and traps to look after, so it's easy to lose the feel of the beat, especially on more mellow tracks. Ultimately, while the soundtrack is massive and varied, with genres including pop, electronica, rock, rap, and others, a core feature of the PC version of Soundfall isn't available on consoles, which is the ability to generate levels based on custom songs. You might think that a music game, where the actual rhythm-based segment isn't all that memorable, is doomed from the start, but this isn't the case, not with Soundfall anyway. The many AI-generated levels of the massive soundtrack don't offer a lot of visual or gameplay variety between each other, and again, at its core it is a fairly standard twin-stick shooter. Yet, the game's colorful and fun visuals, the varied songs, and a surprisingly deep loot system make Soundfall a pleasant experience, and one that I can see myself coming back to from time to time.